My name is Catherine, 32 years old. The smell of grilled meat hung thick in the late afternoon air as laughter rippled across our backyard. Dad was in his element retirement party apron, still on holding a beer like a trophy. Mom fluttered nearby, with her practiced hostess smile passing plates to relatives who'd shown up more for gossip than gratitude. It should have been a day about him 40 years as an accountant, neatly closing one life chapter to start another. Instead, it became the day my own secret life began to crack open. Dad raised his bottle. To new beginnings, he shouted grin wide, and to finally having the time to enjoy what we've worked for. The crowd cheered. I smiled faintly, taking my seat at the patio table. I'd learned to play the part, the quiet, independent daughter, a freelance designer who'd never quite matched her family's conventional expectations. Then Dad said the words that turned the laughter to static in my ears. Catherine, you should thank your old man. I saved you from yourself. He chuckled, ignoring the startled glance I gave him. Young people never think long term. So I took the liberty of reorganizing that stock portfolio you're always bragging about. My hand froze around my glass. What? Mom beamed. Your father liquidated everything yesterday. We're finally booking that European cruise we always dreamed of. Around us, relatives nodded approvingly. Jake, my younger brother, leaned back with a smirk. About time someone did something smart with that money. Catherine's been sitting on it for years. The chatter blurred for a moment as my mind split in two. The daughter smiling politely, and the federal agent silently calculating breach protocols and transaction triggers. That portfolio wasn't savings, it was a facade, a carefully constructed asset web used to maintain my undercover identity. Every share, every movement monitored by Treasury's financial enforcement network. Dad laughed again. You should have seen how easy it was. Found your laptop open last week. Password saved right there. Took me 5 minutes to move everything into our family vacation fund. Uncle Robert, forever one beer from a bad decision, clapped him on the shoulder. Smart thinking, Tom. Family money ought to help the family. Exactly, said Michelle. My cousin, whose 3 failed startups hadn't dulled her arrogance. Catherine's been hoarding while the rest of us work real jobs. Guess karma showed up early. The casual dismissal cut deeper than I expected. They had no idea what I'd sacrificed 3 years under false names, sleeping in motels that stank of bleach and cigarette smoke, chasing money trails across fake shell companies. My secondhand car and bare apartment weren't symptoms of failure. They were props. The timing's perfect, Mom chirped. We leave next Tuesday, Spain, France, Italy. Your father deserves it. I forced a smile. He certainly does. My pulse steadied as instinct took over. The cover assets had automatic defense protocols. If accessed without clearance, alerts would fire within hours. The transfers Dad bragged about would already be flagging in federal servers. Jake tilted his head. What kind of stocks were they anyway? Government securities, defense contractors, a few energy firms, I said lightly. True technically, just not in the way they thought. Dad snorted. No wonder your returns were dull. I moved everything into cruise line stocks. Hospitality's booming. Real investments, not that government junk. The irony nearly made me laugh. The very sectors he'd chosen were under Treasury investigation for laundering illicit funds. Dad, I said slowly, those transactions might trigger reviews. Those bonds have certain... He waved me off. Please, sweetheart. I was managing accounts before you could walk. A few trades won't start World War III. Uncle Robert raised his beer again. To Tom, finally teaching his daughter real finance. They cheered. I nodded, calculating timelines. Unauthorized access Friday afternoon. Federal systems audit every 72 hours. The family would be mid-flight to Barcelona when the red flags exploded on Monday morning. Sarah, you're awfully quiet, Mom said, eyes narrowing with maternal suspicion. Aren't you happy? We're taking the trip of a lifetime. I'm thrilled, I said calmly. It's poetic timing. Aunt Patricia frowned. You're taking this surprisingly well. Usually you'd throw a fit about boundaries. People change, I said. They mistook composure for compliance. They didn't see the years of training how to control facial muscles, modulate tone, keep fear beneath the surface. Dad laughed, leaning back. Family harmony's worth more than money anyway. Agreed, said Robert, slurring slightly. Money's just paper. I looked around the table, every face glowing with beer and sunset light, their glasses lifted in celebration. They thought this was victory. They thought they'd reclaimed what was theirs. They didn't realize what they'd actually touched. Federal property live surveillance accounts, coded transactions linked to national security investigations. The breeze shifted, carrying the smell of charcoal and lilacs. Mom's laughter mixed with the distant hum of a lawnmower. The moment felt oddly peaceful, like the hush before a detonation. I met Dad's eyes and smiled faintly. "You're right," I said softly. "Family harmony really is priceless." Inside, I was already counting the hours until Treasury's algorithms would light up in red. The next morning, the smell of last night's barbecue still clung to the air, a reminder of the performance I'd given, pretending calm while watching my career's foundation unravel in silence. Mom was already at the dining table, surrounded by travel brochures and Dad's signature piles of paperwork. He looked proud, almost boyish, as he tapped a neat stack of printed documents. 47 pages, he announced transaction confirmations, wire receipts, brokerage logs, everything organized by date and amount. I stared at the thick folder, my pulse steady but cold. Those pages weren't souvenirs. They were confessions. Evidence, time-stamped, traceable, airtight. "Impressive," I said evenly. "You've really thought of everything." He mistook my tone for praise. "Of course. If you're going to move funds, do it right." Mom laughed, her voice warm and oblivious. "Your father's always been the responsible one. You should learn from him, Catherine." I nodded, scanning the first page. My cover account number printed in bold. Transfer amount $746,000. Destination Joint Family Travel Fund. Time 14:03 Friday. Right on schedule. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed the neat formatting and signatures meant competence. But all I saw were digital footprints leading straight to felony charges: identity theft, unauthorized federal access, asset compromise. Catherine, Mom said sweetly, "Don't you think this will be such a good story someday? How your father saved your money and turned it into memories instead." I smiled thinly. "Oh, I think people will talk about it for years." The doorbell rang. Jake entered, holding up a new iPhone he couldn't afford. "Guess who just got an advance from the vacation fund?" Dad chuckled. "Might as well start spending early. We'll be making it back in no time." "Cruise line stocks are already up 2 points," Michelle added, stepping in behind him, nose buried in her phone. "See, the market loves hospitality." Her eyes flicked to me with satisfaction. "You should thank him, you know. Some of us would kill for a dad that generous." "Kill, yes," I murmured. "Generous, debatable." "What was that?" she snapped. "Nothing. Just thinking about timing." Michelle rolled her eyes, scrolling again. "By the way," she said, "suddenly, did you guys know some investment accounts are like government protected? There's this whole thing about asset monitoring. If you mess with them, it's technically a federal crime." Mom laughed dismissively. "That's conspiracy nonsense. Catherine's not in government." Dad waved a hand. "I already checked the statements. Normal brokerage stuff. No classified labels." "Right," I said softly. "No labels." The room buzzed with chatter, travel planning, and clinking mugs. The air felt too bright, too loud. I excused myself, slipping into my old bedroom, now half storage, half nostalgia. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, the one with faded quilt covers and a dent where I used to keep a flashlight to read spy novels. Irony tasted bitter in my mouth. On my personal phone, I logged into the secure Treasury app under a hidden partition. The moment my credentials authenticated, a red banner blinked across the screen. "Unauthorized access detected. Asset chain compromised. Escalation pending." I exhaled quietly. The system had already flagged Dad's reallocation. Internal investigations would launch within 48 hours. I opened the window. From here, I could see Dad in the backyard laughing with Robert as they hosed down the patio. Michelle posed for selfies with the travel folder in hand. They were happy, genuinely happy, in their ignorance. The contrast between their joy and the inevitability of what was coming made something inside me ache. I remembered a moment from years ago, Dad teaching me to balance my first checkbook, his hand guiding mine. "Always keep records, Evie. Paper trails protect you." He'd kept that advice faithfully. Now it would be the thing that destroyed him. Mom called from downstairs. "Honey, we need your passport. I'm adding you to the group booking." I looked at the folder of federal evidence sitting on the table, its edges curling slightly under the fan's breeze. "I'll bring it down in a minute," I said. Instead, I opened the folder again and slipped one of the printed receipts into my pocket, the page with his signature. I stared at it for a long time, tracing the ink, feeling the weight of what it meant. The signature looked confident, proud, innocent. He truly had no idea. That night, the house glowed with laughter again. I watched from the balcony as they toasted another smart family move. The patio lights flickered over their smiling faces, each one oblivious to the fact that by this time, tomorrow, their names would be in a federal database. I took a sip of my untouched wine and whispered to myself, 48 hours. 2 words that now felt heavier than any oath I'd ever sworn. Sunday came and went quietly, too quietly. By Monday morning, the silence had weight. My secure line blinked twice, a coded signal from Treasury's internal monitoring system. I already knew what it meant. Before I answered, the automated alert had matured into a live case. The unauthorized activity on my cover account had been escalated. Agent Williams came the calm, clipped voice of Deputy Director Harrison. "Yes, sir," I replied automatically. Instinct overriding emotion. Asset chain. 2X4A has triggered multiple breach flags. The credentials used matched familial identifiers linked to your civilian alias. Understood. We're opening a formal case file. You'll be contacted by internal oversight for interview. Understood, sir. I ended the call, the words still cold in my ear. In less than 24 hours, my father would no longer be a retiree with a European cruise. He'd be a federal suspect. Downstairs, I could hear him humming while packing suitcases. Mom was on speakerphone with the travel agency. Jake was arguing about who'd get the window seat on the plane. And I stood frozen at the top of the stairs watching the last ordinary morning my family would ever have. At 10:14 a.m., my personal phone buzzed. Unknown number. Catherine Mom's voice thin and frantic. "They've taken your father." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Airport security." Her voice cracked. "They said it's federal. Something about computer crimes?" They stopped him at the gate. I closed my eyes. Treasury hadn't wasted time. They'd acted right on the Monday review window. "Where are you?" I asked. "Near the airport detention office. They won't tell me anything," she sobbed. "They said, asset protection violations." "Catherine, what does that even mean?" Before I could answer, my secure line flashed again an incoming directive. I switched lines. Agent Williams. "This is Harrison, your father. Thomas Hargrove is in federal custody. 3 relatives detained for questioning. Customs flagged their departure during a routine asset verification. We need confirmation. Do you wish to intervene or maintain standard procedure?" My throat felt tight. The daughter in me wanted to scream for mercy. The agent in me knew that wasn't an option. "Maintain protocol," I said quietly. "Understood." The line went dead. I stared at the wall clock. 10:21 a.m. 7 minutes since my mother's call, and my entire family's life had been dismantled by algorithms I helped design. I sat down, phone trembling slightly in my hand. I could hear my mom's voice through the voicemail she left seconds later. "Catherine, please. They're saying he stole from the government. You have to tell them it's a mistake." I pressed play on the next message. "Evie, it's Jake. They took Dad's laptop, the receipts, everything. The agents won't tell us why. Mom's crying. Please call me back." I listened to all 17 messages, each one more panicked, more desperate. My family begging for clarity I couldn't give. For 3 years, I'd kept my life split cleanly in two. Catherine Hargrove, the unambitious freelancer, and Agent Williams, the analyst behind digital fences meant to protect national assets. Now those worlds had collided in the ugliest way possible. I poured coffee into a mug, but didn't drink it. The smell reminded me of long nights in surveillance vans. The taste of duty. Finally, I called Mom back. "Mom," I said softly. "Oh, thank God. Catherine, your father, I know. What's going on?" "They're saying it's some kind of fraud case. He just moved money. That's all." I inhaled slowly. "You need to listen carefully. Call Attorney General Patricia Morrison's office. Ask for a federal defense attorney specializing in asset protection violations, what we can't afford." "This isn't about money," I interrupted. "It's about federal crimes. Mom, you need legal representation immediately." There was silence, just soft breathing. "Catherine," she whispered, "how do you even know all this?" I closed my eyes. The moment I dreaded had come. Because I said, "Voice steady, I work for the Treasury Department." A beat of silence, then a fragile, broken laugh. You what?" "For 3 years. Undercover financial crimes enforcement. That account Dad accessed, it wasn't just mine. It was part of a protected operation." I heard her choke back a sob. "Oh my God. He didn't just take my savings, Mom. He breached a federal security structure. The system doesn't recognize family exceptions." No, you have to tell them he didn't mean to." "Intent doesn't matter," I said quietly. "Unauthorized access is unauthorized access." Her breathing hitched. "They're treating him like a criminal." I swallowed hard. Because under the law, he is one. The silence on the other end stretched long and thin. When Mom finally spoke, her voice was small. He thought he was helping you. I know. Can't you do anything I can't interfere, Mom? That's protocol. Protocol, she said, voice cracking. He's your father. And I'm a federal agent, I said softly. I don't get to choose when the law applies. I could hear her crying quietly now, the muffled sound of years of certainty collapsing into confusion. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, staring at my own reflection in the dark TV screen. The agent in me had done everything right. The daughter in me had lost everything that mattered. By evening, Treasury confirmed my father was being processed for identity theft, computer fraud, and violations of federal asset protection statutes. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away. Inside, the clock ticked past midnight, the hour when my double life officially ended. The next morning, the city woke gray and heavy with rain, like even the sky disapproved. I arrived at the Federal Detention Center by 9:00 a.m., sharp, my Treasury badge burning cold in my pocket. I wasn't there as Catherine Hargrove, daughter of the accused, but as Agent Williams, one of the system's own architects. The air inside the interview wing smelled of bleach and bureaucracy. Every step echoed off the sterile floor. The officer at the front desk looked up as I handed over my ID. Agent Williams. Treasury, I said. He glanced at the clearance code, then nodded stiffly. They're expecting you. Down the corridor, I passed rooms lined with glass families crying through partitions, lawyers whispering to trembling clients. Then I saw him. Dad. His posture was smaller than I remembered the shoulders that once carried our family's certainty, now hunched in confusion. His hands always so steady while balancing numbers fidgeted against the metal table. He looked up. Evie, his voice cracked. It had been a long time since anyone called me that. I took a slow breath and stepped inside. The agent assigned to monitor us nodded, setting the recorder on. Dad, I said softly, sitting opposite him. I don't understand, he began. They're saying I hacked into government systems. I just moved money from your account. You left it open. You accessed protected federal assets, I said quietly. The system doesn't care about intentions. He blinked, confusion giving way to anger. Protected. You mean your design nonsense was government property? Catherine, what have you gotten yourself into? I met his eyes. What you got yourself into, Dad, was a federal crime. You breached an asset protection chain belonging to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. He froze. For a heartbeat, I thought he didn't believe me. Then softly, You're serious. I nodded. He looked down at his hands. The tremor there wasn't from age. I just wanted to make sure you weren't wasting your money. I know I said, but those funds weren't mine to waste. He exhaled his breath, fogging the glass between us. They said I could go to prison. 20 years, maybe more. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is kinder than confirmation. The door opened. A woman in a navy suit stepped in, short, sharp eyes, hair tied back. Agent Williams, she said. Director Harrison asked that we debrief you immediately after this conversation. I nodded. Understood. She turned to my father. Mr. Hargrove, your attorney will be briefed at noon. As she left, Dad whispered, You really work for them. I always have, I said. The freelance work was cover. He gave a dry, humorless laugh. My daughter the spy. The word stung not because it was wrong, but because it made me realize how little of me he'd ever really known. I didn't tell anyone, Dad. Not Mom, not Jake. It's how this job works. He nodded, absently, eyes glassy. I thought I was protecting you. Turns out you were protecting everyone else. For a second, neither of us spoke. Just the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint buzz of the recording device. Then I stood. They'll process you for arraignment tomorrow. Cooperate fully. It's the only thing that can help you now. He looked up at me, defeated, proud, heartbroken, all at once. Catherine, will you testify against me? I won't have to, I said softly. The system testifies for itself. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but the guard opened the door before he could. I walked out without looking back. The debrief room was colder, quieter. Deputy Director Harrison sat across from me, reading from a digital report. Your father's documentation is extensive, he said. 47 printed receipts. He practically built the prosecution's case for us. I'm aware, I replied. Your cover is compromised. You'll be reassigned to domestic analysis effective immediately. I nodded. Understood. Agent Williams, he added, voice softer. You've handled this with remarkable professionalism, but internal affairs will still need a statement regarding operational security. Of course. He slid a folder toward me. Inside was a printed summary of the entire event, time-stamped access the bank's metadata, even a partial transcript from Michelle's phone search about federal monitoring. That detail made me pause. Where did this log come from? Her search history flagged during the algorithmic sweep, he said. We found an external access attempt linked to her device 2 days before your father's transfer. I blinked. Michelle, he nodded. No direct proof of malicious intent, but she accessed a financial article that included your cover firm's name. Possibly coincidence, possibly not. A chill crawled down my spine. Had Michelle stumbled too close, or had someone nudged her there? Was my cover already compromised before the breach, I asked. Harrison didn't answer immediately. That's what we intend to find out. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the remnants of my double life. A fake diploma, a stack of client invoices, the burner phone that would soon be decommissioned. Outside, the rain kept falling, steady, relentless cleansing, nothing. I picked up one of Dad's old printouts, still marked with his neat signature, and stared at it until the ink blurred. He'd always believed paper trails protected us. Now his had damned him. And somewhere in those same pages, I couldn't shake the feeling that another story was hiding one I hadn't yet uncovered. By Thursday, the case had an official name, United States v. Thomas Hargrove, a clean title for a mess built on family ties and misplaced trust. The Treasury's internal press office kept it quiet, classifying it as a contained breach within a controlled investigative asset. That meant the story wouldn't hit the media, yet. But the local courthouse didn't need headlines to breed whispers. I arrived early that morning, coat collar turned up against the drizzle. Outside, reporters waited with cameras, hoping for anything, any reaction from the daughter who turned in her father. I kept my head down the hood, shadowing my face. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and wet paperwork. Mom sat near the front, wringing her hands. Her eyes were swollen from nights without sleep. Jake hovered beside her, pacing eyes, darting toward me when I entered. Catherine. Mom's voice was small. The kind of voice that used to call me home for dinner, now reduced to trembling syllables. Mom. I sat beside her. You can fix this, can't you? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth wasn't something she wanted to hear. It was something she already knew, but couldn't accept. Mr. Hargrove's attorney, a young woman introduced herself, briskly sliding into the bench across from us, is negotiating potential plea terms. The prosecution may consider leniency if he cooperates and signs a formal statement acknowledging his unauthorized access. Mom's eyes flickered with desperate hope. Leniency. You mean no prison? The lawyer hesitated. It depends on how the department interprets intent. The fact that he printed every receipt may help. It shows transparency, not concealment. Or it shows pride, I murmured. Mom glared at me. He didn't mean to hurt anyone. No, I said quietly. He just triggered a national security protocol and compromised an active operation. Intention doesn't erase consequences. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, clearing her throat. There's also the matter of digital evidence. The Treasury audit flagged a secondary IP connected to a family member. Michelle, I said immediately. The lawyer blinked. How did you? I know her patterns. Jake frowned. Wait, are you saying Michelle was involved? I'm saying she accessed sensitive financial data 2 days before Dad's transfer. Maybe she didn't mean harm, but maybe she planted the idea. Mom shook her head. Michelle wouldn't. I cut in gently. Wouldn't she? She's always been curious about my accounts, about why I kept them secret. Remember the barbecue? The memory flickered in Mom's eyes. Michelle scrolling on her phone, reading aloud about government assets, pretending it was gossip. The lawyer lowered her voice. If that link can be substantiated, it may change jurisdiction. It introduces a third party. That could reduce your father's liability. For a moment, Mom actually smiled through her tears. Then you can save him. Mom, I said softly, I'm not saving anyone. I'm following the law. Her smile faltered. You sound just like them. I am them, I whispered. An hour later, I sat across from Assistant District Attorney Mark Connors in a windowless office that hummed with fluorescent tension. He adjusted his tie. Agent Williams, we've reviewed your father's file. The evidence is irrefutable. Unauthorized access identity impersonation, federal asset manipulation. However, he paused. There's ambiguity in motive. I folded my hands. He thought he was protecting me. Connors nodded. That may hold weight with a judge. The department prefers a plea to avoid trial publicity, but they'll require your full cooperation, including testimony confirming your employment and the account's purpose. So there it was. The trade, my family's chance at mercy in exchange for the permanent end of my cover and likely my career. If I testify, I asked, my operational identity becomes public record. Yes, which means every criminal organization I've investigated for the last 3 years could trace me. He looked at me evenly. That's the price of justice, agent. Justice. The word had lost all shape. I left the office and stood in the corridor, the buzz of fluorescent lights loud in the silence. Through the glass door, I saw Mom waiting outside, clutching her coat like armor. When she spotted me, her face broke into something close to pleading. What did they say? She asked. I took a slow breath. There's a chance they'll reduce his sentence, but only if I testify. Then do it. It would expose classified work, Mom. I don't care about your job, she cried, voice cracking. He's your father. People turned to look. The echo of her words followed us down the hall. I stopped near the exit and turned to face her fully. If I break protocol, I don't just lose my job, I risk compromising ongoing investigations. People could die. Tears welled in her eyes. You really think rules matter more than family? I wanted to tell her yes. That's what the badge meant. That's what the oath demanded. But the words refused to leave my mouth. Instead, I said quietly, I think consequences matter, for all of us. That night, I couldn't sleep. Files covered my desk, incident reports, timelines, phone records, and in the middle of it all, one photo, Dad holding me as a child, my tiny hands gripping a calculator instead of a toy. His smile then had been simple, pure. I picked up my phone and recorded a message for Deputy Director Harrison. Sir, I said, voice trembling, only once I'll testify. Under seal, if possible. My father's ignorance doesn't absolve him, but it doesn't make him a criminal mastermind either. I'm willing to cooperate fully. I ended the message and stared at the screen. The reflection staring back wasn't Agent Williams. It wasn't Catherine the daughter either. It was something in between, a person trying to live where law and love collide. Outside, sirens wailed faintly through the fog. Inside, I whispered to the empty room, paper trails protect you, Dad. Maybe this one will protect you too. The courthouse smelled like rain-soaked carpet and stale coffee. By the time Dad was escorted in, wearing a gray suit that didn't fit him anymore, the room fell into the kind of silence only guilt can create. I'd seen handcuffed men before, hundreds maybe, but never like this. Never the man who'd taught me multiplication at the kitchen table, who believed receipts made you honest. He looked up briefly and found me in the gallery. Our eyes met. He gave a small, hesitant nod. Not defiance, not apology, just acknowledgement. Mom sat beside me, trembling. Her fingers clutched the cross pendant she'd started wearing again, as though faith could rewrite law. Jake sat stiffly on her other side, jaw clenched, silent. The attorney leaned toward Dad, whispering something that made him wince. Across the aisle, the federal prosecutor, a woman named Fallon, with sharp eyes, and the calm cruelty of someone who believed in systems, stacked her folders neatly. Case 238B, United States, versus Thomas Hargrove, she announced. The words hit like a gavel before the actual gavel did. Fallon began, voice cool and deliberate. The defendant, Mr. Hargrove, accessed protected Treasury assets belonging to an active federal operation. He did so by using his daughter's personal device, saved credentials, and false identification. Though the defendant claims ignorance, the law makes no exception for intent. Mom leaned toward me, whispering, "Why are they saying it like that? He didn't know." "Because ignorance isn't innocence," I whispered back. Fallon continued. The prosecution will also show evidence of an external influence search history records from a relative one, Michelle Lang, that directly reference the account's protective status. This activity occurred 48 hours before the defendant's transfer. The courtroom murmured. Michelle's name hung heavy in the air. She wasn't there, of course. She'd flown to Arizona for work, according to her latest text. Convenient timing. Jake whispered under his breath, unbelievable. Mom blinked in confusion. Michelle. She wouldn't. She might have, I said flatly. Sometimes curiosity is the most dangerous motive of all. When the defense took over, Dad's lawyer spoke softly, almost tenderly. My client made a mistake out of love, not greed. He saw his daughter struggling, or so he thought, and acted impulsively, believing he was helping her. His meticulous record-keeping was not an act of deception, but of transparency. Dad's head bowed slightly as the lawyer's words painted him as naive, misguided human. The jury, if they'd been present, might have softened, but this wasn't a jury trial. It was a plea hearing. Mercy, not proof, was the goal. When it was my turn, Fallon called me to the stand. Agent Williams, not Catherine. I raised my right hand, the motion mechanical sterile. I do. Fallon's questions were sharp but not cruel. Agent confirmed for the record that the account accessed was a controlled Treasury asset designed for undercover operations. Yes. And confirmed that the individual who accessed it did not have authorization. Yes. And that said access compromised multiple ongoing investigations. Yes. Mom sobbed softly behind me. Each yes was another nail in a coffin she didn't believe belonged to her husband. Then Fallon paused, adjusting her papers. Agent Williams, off the record if I may, did you know the defendant personally? The judge raised an eyebrow. Counselor. Fallon nodded. Establishing emotional context, Your Honor. I hesitated, my throat felt dry. Yes, he's my father. A ripple of whispers moved through the courtroom. Fallon looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, and yet you still chose to report and cooperate fully. Yes, she nodded. No further questions. When I stepped down, Dad met my eyes. There was no anger there, only disbelief tinged with something that looked like heartbreak. During the recess, we sat together in a small consultation room, me, Mom, and Jake. Mom's voice was sharp now, like grief had turned brittle. How could you do that? You looked him in the eye and told him he was guilty. He is guilty, Mom. He's your father. He's a federal defendant. Stop hiding behind those words. Jake slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Both of you. He looked between us. You think either of you are winning here? He's going to prison, Mom. She's losing her career. No one walks out clean. The truth hung there raw and final. Mom started crying again, quiet and shaking. I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I didn't know how anymore. Later that evening, Fallon caught me in the hallway. Agent, she said, we've confirmed the IP from your cousin's phone wasn't direct access. Someone may have used her search as a relay, a spoof. My stomach tightened. Meaning this may have started somewhere else. Someone might have been watching your family long before your father's mistake. The thought chilled me. A leak. Possibly. She sighed. But proving that would open your previous cases to review. The department would rather not. So they'd rather let the narrative stay simple. The careless father, the dutiful daughter, the righteous system. Justice served neatly, I said bitterly. Exactly, she replied with a small, tired smile. The public loves neat endings. The next morning, Dad accepted the plea deal, 18 months in a minimum security facility, full cooperation, no appeal. He turned once before being led away, his expression unreadable. Mom reached for my hand. I let her, for a moment. Outside, the sky had cleared, but the air still smelled like rain and endings. Jake drove Mom home. I stood by the courthouse steps watching the sun struggle through clouds. The law had done what it was built to do, protect systems, not hearts. And somewhere deep inside, a question I didn't want to face began to whisper if the system I swore to serve could destroy the family it was meant to protect. And what exactly was I still protecting? It was a month before I saw my father again. The federal detention center sat beyond a long stretch of gray road lined with winter trees stripped bare. When I arrived, the air smelled of metal and disinfectant. The guard led me through 3 locked doors, each one heavier than the last. Inside the visitation room, Dad sat waiting at a plastic table. He looked older, his once crisp posture replaced by a quiet slump. His hands were steady, though folded carefully in front of him, like a man who had made peace with his punishment. Evie, he said softly, you came. I had to, I answered. I needed to see you, as your daughter, not as Agent Williams. He gave a faint smile. Good, because I've had enough of agents and lawyers for a lifetime. The silence between us stretched like unspooled wire. I read your statement, he finally said. The one you gave the court. You didn't try to defend me. I couldn't, I replied quietly. You confessed, and I swore an oath. He nodded. You did the right thing. He looked down, twisting his wedding ring. Still hurts like hell, though. For a moment, we just sat there, father and daughter, both serving different kinds of sentences. I never wanted this, I said. Not the job, not the secrecy, not this ending. I know. His voice softened. You were always the one trying to do the right thing, even when it cost you. He paused. You know the part that haunts me most. It's not the prison food or the charges. It's knowing that for 3 years, my own daughter was living a double life under my nose, and I never saw it. I didn't want you to, I whispered. He nodded slowly. You succeeded. Back at my apartment, boxes were piled high. My reassignment notice had come through. Domestic operations. No more undercover work. No more aliases. My cover identity was being dissolved, my digital existence scrubbed and sealed. As I packed, a soft knock came at the door. It was Fallon. "Congratulations," she said. "Your father's cooperation helped us identify a data anomaly in the Treasury network. Turns out the unauthorized relay we found, the one that mimicked your cousin's IP, wasn't random." I frowned. "You found the source?" She nodded. "An external broker, an offshore consultant, who'd been watching Treasury clearance tags for years. Your cousin's search pinged his system. He used it to map the firewall. Your father's account was just the open door." I sat down slowly. So it wasn't all his fault. "No, but the law still stands." Fallon's tone softened. "You know how it works." "I do," I said. "That's what makes it harder." She hesitated before adding, "He'll be eligible for early release in 10 months, with cooperation credits." I exhaled. That's something. As she left, she turned once more. "You did what we all have to do. Agent chose the system over sentiment. Just remember, it's okay to grieve the cost." That night, I drove to my parents' house. Mom was sitting on the porch, bundled in a blanket, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. When she saw me, she didn't speak, just gestured for me to sit beside her. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore, it was tired, shared. "I visit him every Sunday," she said finally. "He asks about you." "I'm sure he does." She turned to me. "You know, when they first took him, I hated you. I thought you were heartless. But now—" She sighed. "Now I just think you were the only one who understood what was coming." I stared at the yard. The same one where the barbecue had once filled the air with laughter and beer foam and arrogance. The place where everything had started. "Mom," I said softly, "I've spent my whole life believing the system could protect people from themselves. Now I'm not so sure." She looked at me sadly. "The system doesn't protect people, sweetheart. People protect people. You just forgot which ones you were protecting." The words landed like quiet thunder. A week later, I stood by the waterfront where Dad had once promised to take Mom after retirement. The water shimmered dull silver beneath the afternoon sun. In my hand, I held one of his old receipts, the first transfer confirmation, the one I'd kept since the barbecue. I watched the paper curl in the breeze, then let it go. It drifted out over the water ink, blurring numbers, dissolving into ripples. Dad's words echoed faintly in my mind. "Paper trails protect you. Maybe once, but not from everything." Yes. 2 months later, a plain envelope arrived at my new desk in Treasury's domestic division. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper torn from a notebook. "Evie. They've got me teaching finance classes here. Turns out I'm pretty good at it. Guess even in a cage, I can still help people avoid mistakes. I'm proud of you. Always was, even when I didn't understand. Dad." I stared at the note until my vision blurred. Then I folded it carefully, slipped it into my badge wallet, and closed it shut. Justice had been served. The law had been obeyed. But the truth was simpler. No algorithm, no system, no badge could erase the cost of doing the right thing. The barbecue, the laughter, the arrogance, the fall, every piece of it was a reminder that doing your duty doesn't always mean doing good. Sometimes justice wins, sometimes family does, and sometimes you just stand between them trying not to break.